Hey, everybody, it's the Plant-Based Business Hour. I'm Elysabeth Alfano, and I am thrilled to be back with you here today. You know, the Financial Times has been talking about the trough of disillusionment and what's happening to plant-based demand. I think we're going to get into that kind of detail today as I look to extend our point of view from beyond just the plant-based sector. Although it's growing, it still is sort of our bubble together, if you will. I'd like to get the industry perspective from an outsider, which is why I bring on today Pete Speranza, who is the CEO of Wicked Kitchen. So he's not a total outsider, but he did spend 23 years with General Mills. Pete, thanks for being with me today.
Yeah, no problem. This is amazing. Yeah, thank you.
So let's get into that a little bit. With General Mills, you spent time as a plant manager, Yoplait and Betty Crocker Meals, and also Pillsbury. But you also really developed their program for investing in smaller brands. That program is called GM's 301 Inc. Venture. Yeah, their venture fund. So you have a long history in consumer packaged goods and the real nuts and bolts of running those businesses from the plant perspective, but also that venture innovation perspective. So let me start with, what do you see that large scale food companies have that we in plant-based still don't have? Beyond the fact that we don't have the co-manufacturing infrastructure, what else are we missing that big food has?
Yeah, I mean, some of it is just pure scale, right, and global scale. So a lot of these new companies, especially in the plant-based space, right, they're starting in different regions or different parts of the world, and it takes so long to develop a product line and expertise, a brand, you know, that it takes a little bit longer to get global. So I think these companies, like a Unilever or General Mills, right, have the global scale that could be quite impactful. And when you're talking about plant-based, you're really talking about similar ingredients, right, that they're used to dealing with as well. So they already are well versed in agriculture as well as, you know, animal protein. So
yeah. I mean, General Mills, I guess some animal protein, right? Of course, through milk and dairy, et cetera.
Although you'll play in others, right?
Yeah. So it's always amazing to me that those interested in their own bottom line wouldn't have come to the conclusion about the inefficiency of meat and dairy long before the world and the planet told them, you have to pay attention to this. Was this ever a discussion in your 23 years? Were people looking at plant-based ever as an option back then?
Yeah, no, for sure. It's always been a consideration and conversation. I worked for Nature Valley and a few other somewhat plant-based brands and products. Even our Big G cereal was always focused heavily on plants, right? There might have been honey or a few other products, but not much, getting away from just being plants. So yeah, no, there was always discussions on that as well. But, you know, I think it's a little bit of just the history of what's been going on in the world, right? When commodities were created, you know, 180, 90 years ago, whatever it was, I mean, that set the stage for something that probably wasn't, you know, optimized in a sense of what the environmental impact would be on that. But what it did was really take, you know, real ingredients that could be made anywhere around the world, but then all of a sudden you get a single price for that product, right? And once that happens and you get a commodity, then in the food space, right, it turns into this financial game to actually how you're going to make money at it eventually. And that's really been a driving force for these large companies, and why they had a scale so big is so they can get that scale across packaging and ingredients and logistics and shipping and everything else to allow, you know, keeping prices somewhat low. But it was when a consumer was really thinking about it as probably fuel more than they were thinking about it for their own health, right? The benefits that you get actually from a food ingredient in your body, you know, wasn't 100% in the forefront, even though it's obvious somewhat. But in reality, that wasn't, you know, people were thinking about fuel. I need fuel in my body, and this is what I'm going to eat. And I need convenience, and I need this and that. But in reality, it's set us up to have a environmental impact a lot larger than probably anybody ever believed that food could be. And now there's a lot of concern there. And this is where the plant-based movement is getting so much momentum.
100% I agree. But as we look at plant-based and the ramifications of our sector, I think a lot of people think about it as, oh, you know, Wicked Kitchen on my shelf at Sprouts now in the US, which is so awesome. We'll be talking about that in just a bit, or, you know, Beyond Meat or Oatly. But really, when I look at the supply chain, which is something that we focus on a lot at VegTech Invest, we have to get away from monocropping plants as well. So as you
Totally right.
look at really supporting that entire plant-based innovation supply chain, you can't be relying only on soy. And of course, no one would know that better than someone from General Mills, where they have so many grains in their cereals. I used to work at the Kellogg Corporation, by the way. We
Oh,
have that in
wow.
common. I
Yeah,
was on
nice.
Special K and Frosted Mini Wheats. Those were my brands
Yeah,
in Battle Creek.
competitor.
Competitor, that's right. But anyways, what's your perspective on how we shift away from monocropping?
No, and it's some of it is the getting away from the commodity piece, right? Like you can charge more for a different ingredient or different product, even though it might be under the same guise of what it is. But in reality, you're coming with higher nutrients or a better fiber content or whatever it might be. And I think that's what's going to start pulling apart the agricultural piece, which is quite interesting to watch. I mean, even the vertical farming, that you've seen more and more, and it's how do you manipulate light, right, to get different nutrients and different things into people's body, because people do think of it as medicine for your body now, more than ever. So I think you're going to see that pull apart more and more, which will allow you to get away from that and be able to charge probably up the price that's associated with the premiumness of what you want to do, or even getting nutrients back in the soil, so you're not stripping everything as you do it. That commodity thing is such a such a tough thing, but it's you can tell it's already working its way out by just having unique crops and other unique things come to market that never thought they could mainstream, and now it's it was at General Mills we'd always call it it's the niche that went mainstream, right? And it's all these niches that are coming and creating bigger wakes than ever before that are going to make the change.
And how much can we rely on educating the consumer? So the consumer right now is so focused on protein, they actually can't get over it. When in actuality, for me, I always think, well, it's fiber. If you don't have fiber in your diet, which meat, by the way, does not have fiber, it's impossible to be healthy. So, and no one in the Western world is dying of fiber, or excuse me, a protein deficiency. So
No,
I think about who has the onus of educating the consumer about what it really takes to fuel their body? Because I think what they think it takes to fuel their body isn't perhaps what is really necessary to fuel their body. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, you hit the nail on the head. You used to think of industries and how they change, right? And it was a carb-based industry that was moving towards protein. And to your point, protein became the craze. And a lot of it was probably diet-based and other different influencers that were actually creating that momentum and stuff like that. But I think what's creating the momentum now more than ever, and you think about it as a rating system, right? You used to have a rating system for a hotel, and it was if it got 0 to 5, you'd be going like, well, if it's a 1, I'm not going to that hotel. And in reality, you don't know any of the people that actually put the rating in, right? But you're learning to trust that more than you actually trust the brand in a weird way. And it moved its way to food, to be honest with you. And once you start getting peer-to-peer kind of comments or peer-to-peer learning or peer-to-peer kind of knowledge base getting shared, to your point, that it's going a lot quicker and a lot sooner across the whole population. Even trends in general, right? When you see them around the world, I get a chance to travel quite a bit now with Wicked because we're a global company, but the trends are very similar. Like this plant-based movement isn't just happening in the UK or US. It's like it's everywhere. How did that spread so quickly, right? It's a peer-to-peer kind of conversation and education that's going on that's causing the speed to be so quick.
And do you think we'll see, as I do, marketing really playing a bigger role in that it's that chance to educate the consumer and also obviously stand apart? So we might see front of pack, not soy, but mung bean or barley, and quantify the benefits of something like a barley. I'm not quoting barley here because I don't know anything specific about barley per se, but it has 7 grams of this and 14 grams of this, and these amino acids. Do you see ingredients taking a role front of pack?
I definitely do. And I think you've seen it for a while now, and this is back to your fiber comment and others, right? If just different attributes that you want to highlight to actually separate yourself from the pack a little bit. So you'll constantly see an evolution of that. But to your point, with the investment that's been going on in the plant-based space and ingredients has really helped some of these ingredients become shining stars. And it could be pea protein. It could be, we use a lupine bean in our ice cream. That is so unique. It's kind of an Eastern European based product that not a lot of people even know in the US. But when you taste our ice creams, it comes with this culinary caliber kind of recipe, but in reality, it's that lupine bean base that really gives a unique and amazing flavor. Yeah. So we're so excited to be able to your point, challenge ourselves to look for some of those ingredients, but more importantly, to your point, they're available more and more, which is nice. And that's where a lot of the investment world has been going, especially in the plant-based space, to allow some of these ingredients become, I don't know if you remember having a pea protein probably just 5 years ago in any product, but it wasn't usually a good taste experience.
Right.
Let's say, right? And after refining it and doing some other investments in that space, you can see how it's becoming cleaner and cleaner flavors and products that can actually be bases that can cut across everything, even oats and other things that you're seeing is because of some of the investment that has been happening in the last 10 years.
Yeah, gosh, so much to unpack there. We're talking cleaner label, but we're also talking investing. So I guess I'll go there now, and we will get to Wicked Kitchen because so much to talk about there. Like, I didn't even know you had ice cream. So we're going to get into all that you carry. But maybe let's go down the investment path, because I still see, and this is sort of a worry for me, is I still see so much investment going into the innovation, which is wonderful, and the end products, which is wonderful. And this is what's so exciting, maybe into the ingredients, but I don't see anybody that interested in the nuts and bolts of the cold manufacturing plants. And I'm wondering if the system is imbalanced and that we have too much money going towards, let's say, fermented proteins, which is so exciting, biomass and precision fermentation. And maybe not enough going into ingredients, and then certainly not enough going into just the production facilities. What do you think?
Right. No, I agree with you. And I think it's just an evolution, right, that naturally happens as you build a business and things are such a large, the timeline between, and the investment that you have to put in capital wise, right, is such a long-term investment that to your point, you got to see a little proof in the pudding before you add, right? So as an industry is growing and getting larger, and to your point, the plant-based industry is probably lacking a lot of command, especially globally. But it had to first come with like finding ingredients that can make great tasting products. And it's not just mimicking what's out there, but it's actually tasting better than what's actually out there today. So the choice is at parity, if not even a stronger choice. And then you can see the investment world start working on, to your point, the scale, the infrastructure, the shipping ingredients. There's dedicated, plant-based dedicated logistics folks that we work with in Europe that are 100% just on plant-based products, which, 5-7 years ago, you're like, I don't even know how they could survive. But they can because of the what's happening now and the pent-up demand, and as well as the products now being here. It makes perfect sense, right? That someone in between there that could really, really help out the industry in a way and be focused at it. So I think you'll see more and more of that. And then you'll also see, investment in just other food technologies that really will get at, environmental impact, or will get at, a lot of people have a lot of different reasons why they're moving to plant-based, right? So it could be just for animal wellness and things like that. And, you're just seeing more and more of that type of investment that will actually kind of push us away from that, right? If it's, if it's fermentation, if it's vertical farming, if it's cell-based foods, there's a reason behind all of them. And a lot of them is just the transparency of the supply chain is showing some things that people are like, yeah, I don't know, even if I'm not an activist vegan, not sure I would, want to eat every day, knowing that I'm maybe harming some animals. Like if I could eat as good as I did before, if not better, but don't have to harm any animals, why wouldn't I do it? And most people will say like, yeah, like makes sense. Like in general, right? Like you're like, if I could do that every day, I would do it. This investment though is kind of showing the way of how to do it and what are some of the different options to do it, right?
Yeah, so exciting. Again, so much to unpack there of what you've said. I'll kind of go back to the beginning of what you were talking about. So there are these people specializing in Europe primarily. That's where Wicked Kitchen was originally headquartered, and again now in the U.S. at Sprouts, and also I believe in Kroger. So very exciting. Right. But you're talking about, so I was talking about like the nuts and bolts of the building, but you're actually talking about the expertise of the plant manager. Of course, this makes sense to you having so much expertise in this area, your history with General Mills. But I worry that we don't even have that expertise here in the US. So in addition to the buildings, we don't necessarily have the know-how, because it is different running, obviously a meat processing plant than a plant-based plant.
Yeah. We actually call it a refarming. I think I might have mentioned this to you a while back. it is a way to think about farming differently. And, vertical farming is kind of doing that as well, right? Getting closer to the population, and it'll be a different type of farmer, right? It'll be a little bit more of a technician than it is a true farmer in that case. But think about, I think I told you an example of what we're doing in the UK. We're actually converting a chicken farm over to a mushroom farm, right? So we're showing the farmer, like, here's where people are heading. Here's how to make great tasting food out of mushrooms. So using our culinary skill to show them that it's not just a pure ingredient that goes and sits on a Tesco shelf for sale, but it could also be parlayed into actually convenient items that really people are going to crave and really want as well. But it's a commitment, right, on both sides to relearn themselves a little bit on like what a new industry could look like and how could it be set up in a way that actually is sustainable, right? And that's, we're doing that as we speak actually in the UK.
So this to me is the modern day fairy tale that comes true. So wouldn't it be so great if those farmers who were chicken farmers, and to be clear, folks, please Google this yourself. You don't have to take it from me or Pete, but basically their lives, as I see it, is indentured servitude. They are struggling with debt. It is not a favorable condition for them. They're crushed by huge corporations, which no one in their right mind would truly define as a farm. They're running these factories of hellholes, and has nothing related to land or animal or human decency, I will add. If you could take that situation and ameliorate in a Cinderella-like situation such that that farmer has a better quality of life, producing better quality foods,
more sustainable,
for higher standards, for the planet, for that person, for those animals. I mean, it's dreamy. How difficult was it to find that farmer and convince them, not convince, but sort of say, hey, let's do this together? And how difficult was it to do and execute?
I think in general, it takes a lot of parties, right, to think through it. So it's in partnership with even the government there of giving some grants and things like that as well. But then someone like our founders, right, that are very culinary forward in the mushroom space and very familiar on how to manipulate them in a way that actually will allow the kind of the masses to get excited about the products, because not everybody understands mushrooms or even how to cook them for that matter. So you need someone in that forefront, but then just as important, a caring retailer, right? So Tesco is in the forefront of this as well, and they're committing to so many pounds a year that they'll take from the farm to help them with that conversion, right? Because to your point, it might take 3-4 years, and it reminds me a little bit about the organic kind of transition, right? If it takes 7 years of transition, you need a little bit, you need some bigger teams around you to actually make you feel confident that you actually convert your farm over to get to the holy grail eventually, to your point, because it's a little scary at the beginning until you get there, right? So
it's very scary. It's new territory, and it may seem, I'm so curious about this. Did it seem from the farmer's perspective that he or she was getting in bed with the enemy?
It's funny you say that. For this farmer, for matter of fact, I don't think so. But to your point, it was a little bit on the financial side too, where they weren't feeling strong with the current situation. They were seeing the consumer kind of leaning away from eating as much chicken protein, I'd say, as before, and other aspects of their business model that I think got them extra excited around, let's explore something different. So, like you said, I think it takes a little bit of a hardship first before people change their minds a little bit. But I think, once again, without the support from all those different parties I just mentioned, it would be very hard to do on your own, because it is years and years or decades of doing the same thing over and over again that, it might have been even passed down and stuff like that. So that you're just like, all right, how do you change that habit? It's like, it just takes a while, but it also takes a great support team.
Yes. Yeah. It's re-envisioning a new life for yourself and the community, and also everyone's eating habits. So the consumer's sort of reimagining their life, and the farmer is as well. Because we're talking about mushrooms, and I am such a huge mushroom fan myself, I'm going to see if I can share the Wicked Kitchen website. Having a little bit of trouble here. Does everybody have that? Let me see. Can you see it, folks? You can. Let me, well, no, I'll go back here. Okay, so as we go to the Wicked Kitchen website, look at all these things, and I say, I didn't even know you had ice cream. Let me see if I can show some great food here. I was trying to bring Oh, there we go. Okay, so you've got broths. You do so much with mushrooms. Korean-inspired bowl made with Beyond Meat. You've got mac and peas to go. Jalapeno burgers. Uh, you've got some incredible marinades. 12 spices of amaze balls. This is so fun to read this list. Punchy pumpkin laksa kit. Spicy smoky dreamy mac. So really, you are cross category, which is pretty amazing. And you do a lot with Korean style shroom shreds, mushrooms. So you do a lot with mushrooms. Yeah. How important is it to have a clean label product?
It is important, obviously. So we try to stay as clean as we possibly can and really focus on the culinary flavors too. Those names they just rattled off. If you think about going to an Indian restaurant or an Asian restaurant, and you have certain flavors that you expect no matter where you are on the globe, and that's what the brothers did in the UK, which makes it amazing because it's we have 200 plus SKUs in our portfolio now of those products that you have seen. Yeah, with about 150, I think, active in the UK. But more importantly, we know these flavors translate well no matter where we take them. So it's a packaging change, and we can move them to different places of the world, but it's because of that culinary aspect of how they created the flavors and the names, the textures, all that stuff that gets us so excited. And then I think I think I mentioned this before a while back, but it's one of those things that as I got deeper into the plant-based space, and this is my early my days of running the 301 Inc. Venture arm a little bit. You'd always hear a lot about meat and milk and how do you convert, and there's a lot of focus and attention on just certain categories within the plant-based space for a lot of good reasons, right? Because I think I was helping Beyond Meat quite a bit when I was an investor back then, just trying to figure out how to mimic it to make it look and taste and really act just like meat, because they felt like that was the quickest way or an easiest way for a transition. But as you thought about it, it's like you eat way more than just, a burger at lunch, right? Like you eat snacks, you have some at night, you want ice cream, you want cakes, you want brownies, and everywhere you turn, if you look on the back of pack, there's some kind of dairy or meat that, product inside most of those. And then you're just like, oh my God, if I was a vegan, it would be hard to find food every day. And I think that's one of the great insights, I would say, that this Wicked team had early on from the founders around, we're going to give the variety that people really want every day. So they don't have a hard time thinking about food, right? That they can walk in there and go, I can trust that Wicked's going to have an amazing taste and comes without plants or without animal protein. But more importantly, has the variety that I kind of look for every day when I want to eat. Like, I don't want to eat the same thing every day. I want to eat a lot of variety and mix and matching, just like you saw there. It only took 4 years, right, to get 160 SKUs on shelf. And we're mimicking the same thing in the US, and we will do the same thing in other parts of Europe as well as Asia. And we're looking for like-minded retailers that think the same, because we'd rather go deeper with less partners and really give that experience to their consumer. And that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah, you want more commitment from that partner as well. So you don't want, pick 5 SKUs from my 160 and have this tiny shelf space.
Right.
Yeah, you want to be committed that you're getting that shelf space, that marketing position as much as anything else. So back to our fairy tale analogy, if I can say it. We keep referring to the brothers, but what we're talking about, everybody, is Derek Sarno and his magic, in the kitchen, and then Chad Sarno as well. Both the founders of Wicked Foods, again, starting in the UK with Tesco. What an amazing partner. Chris Kerr, who's your partner, Unovus Capital, New Crop Capital, he's been on this show, and he would tell the story about how he and Derek would walk the aisles of Tesco and how they were
one item.
Yes, right. And they were thinking, like, we've got a white space, we can do it. So, kind of fairy tale land again, but really this innovation coming out of the chefs of Wicked Kitchen, Derek and Chad. Chad also deeply dedicated to Good Catch Foods. So it's not just Wicked Kitchen, folks. It's also Good Catch Foods.
But we learned what we learned in our land too, just to round that out, was, the Tesco, which is a mainstream retailer, right? It's like a Walmart within the US, if you think about it that way. And for them to actually think about it ahead of time, go find Derek in Portland, bring him over from Portland to the UK, and then allow him to lead basically their plant-based innovation, even though they didn't have a lot on shelf at that point in time. So to your point, Chris and those guys could only find 1 or 2 items, and one was like hummus or something. It wasn't even, it's just a dip,
avocados.
Right? Yeah, exactly. Like, oh, you got a bunch of plant-based stuff. But that's just that insight and a lot. And once again, it takes a retailer to see it just as well as a great innovator. And this collaboration is what made it go so fast and be such a big spark in the UK. And then once 4 years down the road, I mean, everybody can see it, right? It wasn't just a variety play, but this culinary play really can change the hearts and minds of people instantly, and then get them to be a plant-based trajectory more than ever before.
Yeah, and I hope that Tesco wins big financially on this, because I always think that, this is why I'm doing VegTech in the financial markets. I always think when money comes to play, everybody listens. And it was risky 4 years ago for Tesco to be so involved, bringing someone over from the US and to make that kind of financial commitment. And I hope it's paying off well for them. I'm always hearing about them in the news.
How is the plant-based sector doing? Year-over-year growth is quite large in that space. So if they didn't have it, I don't know what else would be grown as quickly as what they currently have. But to your point, that to be so dedicated to such a wide lineup, I think had them capture the market more than anybody else. Their number one share over there with Wicked as the lead brand, and that's a testament to your point, to their commitment and their excitement for the space. So.
Yeah, that's really exciting. And one last point on these 160 SKUs. I think it's very smart to go after flavor. So I know a lot of plant-based brands go after, I can mimic meat, I can be the same as meat. But I think beyond that, there was a lack or a white space of global culinary flavors. The world likes to eat Asian food and Mexican food. And I thought that was smart to really capture that white space.
Well, I think one thing is to stay true to that, though, too, right? As a brand, we have two culinary leaders, right? Two culinary chefs as lead. And so we don't try to be the Me Too, we're not a free-from brand, right? Like, we're not trying to be as low on sodium or salt or whatever it might be, or sugar and others. And it's not around, we use what we need to actually make it taste amazing, right? And if we wanted to be, sometimes if you're considered an alternative, which we don't consider ourselves an alternative, you can see yourself in a position where you're trying to serve a lot of different folks, right? In the kind of space to try to create enough momentum. But I think that's where brands get a little bit off, because they start going away from where their hearts are at. And then are trying to be, I don't need to be like managing the 7 different allergens, I shouldn't be the brand that tries to tackle all that, like other folks can try to do that. But if we are just a culinary version that just happens to be plants, that's where we're going to be.
Mm-hmm. I think you are smart, crafty, and also a tad lucky. When one is first like that, and there's so much equity to being first, you can be cross-category. You can't just take the whole category. Then if you're coming in afterwards into the market, you have to position yourself against that category leader, and you have to do things like lower in fat and all that. But when you're early on, you can take it all.
Yeah, and I think, to your point, I think there'll be some competition in the space across the board. There is already, right? It matters what category you're in, but I think the way we've done it, I think we'll find, those power categories and products that we can really be, leaders in. But then, more importantly, we think of it as we're surrounding a business that's all about mission. So the more we can feed the mission is who we are, and I think that will be the big separator over time. Because we drive mission more than we actually think about the food, knowing food is the core of it, but in reality, it's the mission that we're on that I think will make us the strongest.
Thank you for doing that. So recently in the Financial Times, there has been the trough of disillusionment, saying that, I think they were speaking to the US only, that, obviously in COVID times, there's this huge tailwind behind plant-based eating as people stayed at home. They had time to cook. They also had time to focus and Google their health questions and really focus on their health and being as strong as they could be. Now we're coming back. I mean, we're still in a pandemic, but things have tapered to some extent, or at least people are coping better. And they're going back to their ways. They're going back to not cooking as much and being in the office. And so there are reports that consumer interest and buying is down in plant-based. You're talking in the UK, at least year-over-year growth. What are you seeing in the US? And I know you just launched, but what are your thoughts, more importantly, about the trough of disillusionment?
Yeah, it's funny that it was stated like that. And I've seen that same, I think it was an article that came out a year and a half ago, or maybe a year ago, just before Plant-Based World or some in New York. But more importantly, I think it was a focused attention on some of those categories that I mentioned, where they're hyper competitive in the meat and dairy space. And there's only so much meat and dairy like people can eat, as you think about adoption and changes. So if you have so much competition there, I could see why it looks like, well, you had all these grand plans with all these different brands and they're not meeting their expectations. I could see why that glut of products could be in a category and actually cause that kind of conversation to be had for whatever reason. But in reality, I think retailers know. And we see it with Kroger, we see it with Sprouts and others. There's tons of excitement around adding more shelf space for plants more than any other space in the store. As the variety play once again comes in, because people eat more than just meat replacements and dairy replacements, I think that will allow consumers to continue to grow and expand. And then it's a younger crowd, right? So our kind of base of who buys this, even at Kroger, is somewhere in the 25 to 40 year range, and they're just early starters of their family or whatever it might be. And so you're gonna end up having generational change here a lot that I think will be quite impactful to the plant-based space, because everybody sees not just for your personal health but the environmental impact, and if you can eat with harming less animals, that seems like a winning combination.
100%. And I love what you say about retailers getting the memo. Sprouts has been so dedicated to this. They've really put over some real estate into the plant-based play. So very impressive there. Still, it takes marketing and messaging. How has Wicked Kitchen been marketing itself in the US?
Yeah, I mean, a few different ways. One, like I mentioned, so we're only in 2 retailers today, right? But on a national scale. So we're able to come with kind of custom in-store, out-of-store kind of marketing and social plans and things to really ramp up kind of the awareness and getting trial in the store. If you think about early days, you're just like, I want everybody that shops Kroger to know who we are, right? More than I care about everybody in the country at the beginning. And eventually it works its way through, right, to the whole country. So that's kind of been our focus and where our plan sits. And then we're also, pretty local and once again about our mission and where we're heading. And I think that's been getting a lot of good traction from a PR perspective and others. And it could be, around our Veganuary commitments, that they had a record amount of folks signing up in the US for Veganuary this year. We're the lead sponsor for them globally, and keep pushing that message out, not just in January, but year round. And then we're partnering with a group called Support and Feed as well.
Love them.
Yeah, which is Billie Eilish's mom that leads that group, and they're just amazing, and they're like-minded in their mission, and we just partnered with them. So we've been on the Billie Eilish tour with those guys, really in the Eco Village, really pushing a pledge to eat 1 plant-based meal a day, change for 30 days, and that's been pretty exciting too, and get a lot of momentum and PR and really a lot of social action as well. So we'll continue to do that in a little bit more grassroots, but then we got our culinary side too that will come through more and more. If you ever go to our website or ever look to see what we got, I mean, we got so many different recipes that we're willing to give to anybody that wants it. And then it's cutting across so many different product lines. But I think we do it in a way that's easy to find and easy to understand and convenient, right? For folks that, to your point, if they can't just buy the products that we have off shelf for a quick meal, they can take our ingredients home and actually cook an amazing, plant that's the star of the show or middle of the plate, right? Exciting. We've been creating some exciting stuff in that space. So.
Yeah, it's fascinating because you're cross-category in terms of what you offer of products, but you're also cross culinary stage, if you will. So there's the food that you can take just on the run. You could microwave it and walk out the door. Then there's, the marinades that you might cook with, all the sauces that you put out, and then the, shroom shreds that you might want to do things with, put it in a bowl and add it to tacos or what have you. So you're kind of catching people at all stages of the kitchen, and then it's really, really interesting. That's why I asked about your marketing. And again, when you are as large as...
Yeah, go ahead. I was going to say, it started out as, Wicked Kitchen actually started as a blog like 7 years ago, right before we were ever a product line. And it was really the 2 brothers that were like so aspirational on what they could do and how they can help folks in their network of not just vegans, but plant-based, folks that want to follow a different diet. And they were the go-to, right? They were go-to for a lot of that group. And they've built a nice network even before the products even came to life. But it was an outlet for them to really share the culinary skill that they learned in the restaurants that they were running and how to translate to your home kitchen, right? So to your point, we come with all the way from convenience all the way to the ingredients, but it's meant to capture, to your point, a different consumer that has a little bit more time at home, but that doesn't know how to cook a plant and make it the star of the show, right? And that's what those guys have done. If you've seen some of the videos, they're so fun and they're so amazing. It's fun to watch.
Yeah. I love what you say, because I always think when I go to a restaurant and they're like, oh yeah, no, we really don't have anything that's without meat or dairy. And I think like, well, then send your chef back to school, because if you don't know what to do with vegetables,
Totally
you're
right.
not
Totally.
really much of a chef, because
Yeah.
anybody can take a slab of meat, put pepper and salt on it, fry it, and move on. There's really no skill therein. So
that's why saying a vegan chef, to your point, it's like a different level of culinary skill, to be honest with you, because to your point, it takes quite a bit to actually be able to match the flavors and textures, and it's not to mimic, it is just to make great tasting food. But if you're going to make it the center of the plate, people have expectations and they match them. Like it's crazy. Some of the products I've had that the bros have made, it's crazy the culinary skill those guys have.
Yeah, it's so awesome. And I'm so grateful for what they do. Chad, in addition to Dan Ultralamalik and Chris Kerr, Chad Sarno has been on this show. So Derek, it's down to you. He'll have to be on it as well.
Good morning,
Yes, yeah, I'll do it. I don't mind. So we did talk briefly about clean label, but let's face it, is it really our job to tell people what to eat? Maybe it is. That might be your perspective, or maybe your perspective is no, we attract them with delicious tasting food. And then it's up to them if they want to go clean label or they want to sit down in front of Netflix with some ice cream. What are your thoughts on, like, must everything be clean label, and where are we all going to land there?
Yeah, I mean, usually clean label is a little bit tied to how fresh the product, that you want the product to be, right? So if you're in the fresh spot, it's as clean label as you can possibly get it, because there's no preservatives, there's no anything to hold it, there's no any added, flavorings that might need to last through a shelf life or whatever it might be, right? So it is a little bit of where the consumers are at. I'll tell you right now, in the UK, they're way ahead of the US in the sense of the fresh business and the fresh market in general, right? They just really eat fresh, and a lot of it is, geography, right? How close that. The majority of the people that live in London, right, that are that close to all their food, they're just like, I'm eating fresh every day. Like I can just grab a meal down the street, like all the time. So their fresh world is a lot bigger than the US, but there's reasons for it, right? The US has a lot more to travel, right? A lot more for the farmers to travel. And from that, you're going to get some ambient and frozen in that mix, right? So that, and then what comes with ambient and frozen a little bit is sometimes some additives and other things that are needed. Now, hopefully you can do them as natural as you possibly can, but there are a few things that are needed if people want convenience, right? And people do. So there's a management there, but I think you're hearing more and more is like the frozen is the new fresh, like in the US, right? Like you can freeze quite cleanly, not like the good old days of your TV dinners. You can create a pretty clean product and have it frozen and actually have a great experience when you unthaw it or heat it up. So I think that's a little bit of a change too in the global supply chain of how to manage frozen. That you're going to see more and more, but it is a little bit of degree like where you're at with your eating habits, and then and just how convenient do you want food to be.
Yeah, I love that you say this, because I do think there's been incredible transformation of the frozen section. That's actually, even though Beyond Meat gets all the play in the fresh section, to me, it's really the frozen section that has grown leaps and bounds, and you're seeing lots of real estate really being dedicated to that in the retail stores. It's very interesting. And I agree with what you're saying. You can get a really clean label product, freeze it, and then it's convenient because it's already prepared, but it's pretty clean label. That said, another pet peeve of mine is, and I'll be honest, I don't think the plant-based industry as a whole did a good job at defending itself. There were these attacks, a year or two ago about, the ingredient list being long and there being words that people hadn't seen before. And, let's face it, folks. Well, first of all, health comes on a continuum. So you can, have factory farmed meat, then you can have grass-fed meat, which is still going to have cholesterol and TMAO and animal heme, but in theory, and no fiber, but in theory, it's maybe going to have less antibiotics and hormones, not even 100% that's true, but that's a step. And then you can go to, on the junk food side of let's say plant-based, and then you can go on the clean label side of plant-based, and then you can cook for yourself at home, and then you can go raw, right? So it's a clean spectrum. And when people buy Beyond Meat and they scan the barcode of the package, no one thought it was a carrot. no one is confused that it's not a head of lettuce. This is a convenient food. And so I feel that there's that spectrum, that not everything has to be clean label, and that there's a realism by the consumer that when they're scanning a barcode, they know that at some point they have decided to purchase a processed food to a certain extent. And there's
I agree. And I think the more and more the category plant-based gets larger and larger, right? You'll see it divide itself out, right? And there'll be single ingredient plant-based, a mushroom steak that's just been marinated, that's ready for your grill, to your point, I won't call it highly processed, but processed meats and things like that, that to your point are a mix of products, right? To get the textures, tastes, and things that they're looking for. When I was back in the cereal industry, right? People used to say cereal's highly processed, but in reality, it's like 4 ingredients, right? So, and it's cooked with water and mixed with steam, like there's hardly anything in it. And you're just like, wow, it's amazing that people call that highly processed. So I think it's a little bit of a perception is somewhat reality. But I think as the category gets large enough, you'll be able to split it out. So then the consumers, to your point, that are leaning one way or the other within, but want that space, will have the option, right? Which will be awesome, because it is all around, consumer choice, right? And the more we can give them more choices, I think the better we'll be as a world.
100%. And consumers want choices. And just to kind of put a fine tune on this, so as you are moving down the spectrum, and if you do grab Beyond Meat, it is healthier for not having trimethylene oxide, not having cholesterol, animal heme, and it has a little bit of fiber, not a whole heck of a lot, but you're not going to get antibiotics and hormones. So, lots of good. And then, since I'm rattling off statistics, just if you were to compare a Beyond Meat burger to a regular beef burger, according to a life cycle analysis study, it's 99% less water, 93% less land, 90% less greenhouse gas emissions, and 46% less energy. So, as Innovo market research says, planetary health has now surpassed personal health as a reason for changing one's diet. So lots of good numbers to look at there.
I agree.
But one more question before I get to maybe to a couple personal questions, and then we're all going to run with our busy lives. Packaging. So we talk about scanning, a Beyond Meat package, and I see packaging and sustainable packaging and packaging for the planet as becoming a really big part of the equation. And in addition, I see maybe a carbon footprint tax or a carbon footprint price on the package. Do you see any of this coming down the line?
I could see more and more of that to try to tease out the transparency of it all, right? There's a lot of transparency on miles. There's a lot of transparency on greenhouse gases and things like that somewhat. But to your point, around packaging and where it's coming from and what it's kind of like those carbon credits and things like that. I think you'll see more and more of that tease out. But I think there's also a change as back to investment, right? There's some change going on too that you can watch and see that where, oil-based packaging might be, not existing, sooner than later, just because there's a lot more alternatives to make it a little bit easier, right? Will it get to a point where it can be totally, edible paper or whatever it might be? I don't know about that, but I think there's enough technology and enough investment in this space to actually get us into a whole nother layer from a packaged goods perspective that will get people pretty excited about it. With cardboard and others can be pretty recyclable. It matters, what you're getting exactly, but you're just going to see more and more improvements, on how that's all going to shake out, which I'm pretty excited about.
I am too. Do you happen to know the folks at Evanes?
I don't. No.
I will make an intro if you'd like. Incredible packaging that is really sustainable, and it's packaging trays that you can cook on or microwave, so it's great for individual packaging. If you're a food company and you're putting your food on some kind of previously, let's say plastic, now you can do it on something that's compostable, that also microwaves, can withstand heat and freezing and stuff. So I'll make an intro if you feel like it.
Please. Yeah. We're using some unique paper for our cardboard up in Finland actually right now that we're learning from, and then once we learn, we'll actually probably transfer it to other products within our portfolio. So we're constantly on our mind as well.
Yeah, and I love that you say that investment is going into this. So maybe we can focus a little bit on either through Wicked Kitchen or what you're doing with Unovis. It's kind of a parallel question to your predictions. Where do you think things are going? And let's say, I used to say like 10 years, but let's say like 3 years now because things are moving so quickly. But this is kind of determined by where's the money going. So who's getting the big bucks and what do you think is going to play out, let's say, in the next 3 years?
Yeah, and I think, it stems from, think about the word vegan, right? And think about organic once again, right? Think about those two words. And then you're just like, all right, not didn't go that far, isn't very exciting. It's good for a core people that were really like, we need to see change. But this plant-based word, right, which is pretty generic, but it really includes everybody to get involved, right? Including the large and big. So to your point around having large companies like General Mills or others get that in tune with it quickly and actually figure out what they're going to do with it is way better than what it used to be, where it used to be the small against the large. And there's used to be this fighting going on in between, when you're in those kind of spaces. And then the regenerative ag, right, is another word that has come up lately. That is another one that gets people highly excited. Like I'm here in Minneapolis, Minnesota, right down the road is Cargill, right? One of the largest, ag companies in the world, if not the largest, largest private for sure. And you already see the investments that they're making. They're making investments in tons of regenerative ag projects around the world. They're thinking about changing out a bunch of different ways how they manage transportation, all the electric cars and everything that are happening in trucks. Like that's all being generated because these things became mainstream conversations for everybody to be included, which is awesome. Because the old world, it was the small against the big. It was, and I'm not putting an investment there because I don't think it's going to be big enough. But when these two words that are so somewhat generic, but in reality, it changes the game of everybody in the industry and how they think about it, that you're not just seeing investor money, but you're seeing large consumers, customers that are putting R&D dollars on it like crazy because they know that's what the future is. It's been fun to watch, from once again in Minneapolis, General Mills' headquarters here, Land O'Lakes is Hormel is here, and I could see all four of them because I get a lot of local news around what they're doing, and they're changing quite drastically because they see where the consumers are going, and that's exciting because it means there's a lot more, not just money from investors, but there's money from these big companies that are thinking about it differently as well, because they're not going away per se, but can they change their whole portfolio in the next 10, 20 years? For sure they can. Can they help the planet a lot faster than, maybe even Wicked can? Probably. Might as well have more people in it than just us trying to figure it out. So I love the idea of inclusiveness and just getting the whole planet seeing it sooner than later. And we work with tons of investors globally that are feeling the same. And they're not just putting money in, but they're actually doing something too, which is awesome.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned this because I just had an interview on the New York Stock Exchange, and we were talking about, are you sure it's really going plant-based, Elysabeth? Isn't it just a fad? And I say, well, no, it's a shift of the entire global food supply system. What you might see on the shelf is a plant-based product, but you're seeing industry get behind and shift all of their business models because they need a better business bottom line, so they can't waste water, they can't waste land, they can't deforest. I mean, these things are catching up with them, and they're seeing not just consumer driven, I think, but they're seeing like for their bottom line, it would be better if they used less resources, which are just going to go up in cost as we have less arable land to work with due to climate change and a growing population. They're seeing how tricky and inefficient and a bad business equation the current food system is, and that there's money to be made by shifting. And, hopefully they're interested in helping the planet. I'm not sure, but they're on board. And this is what makes me say, it's not a fad. It's industry coupled with consumer shift.
Totally right.
That makes it inevitable.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's exactly what's going on, and it's an exciting time to be in the food industry for that reason. But once again, I like the idea that everybody's getting involved. Like it's not going to happen from a handful of folks or even just a small innovator, a bunch of innovators, but it's really getting everybody involved. Because to your point, there's so many different things that could be modified and changed over time to actually get it to a scale that everybody can, pay for all the products that they want to eat, right? They're like, we shouldn't have to pay a premium for plant-based products. You just see in the UK where Starbucks stopped charging, an upcharge for oat milk, right? Yeah. And it's going to turn to an everyday thing. And it's like that same idea. It should happen everywhere, right? And then it's a consumer 100%. Choice. There's no alternatives. Everybody's on the same playing field. and then you're fighting for the consumer in a sense of what your brand might be standing for or what your products do. But in reality, it's everybody getting engaged and not just pretending and putting their head in the sand, going like everything's fine. It's like it isn't fine. We need to make a change.
And we need to make it now. And the baseline should be that we all have healthy options to choose from. And it's up to us just how healthy or not healthy we want it to be. But paying a premium to have a healthy, fresh option is that's so yesterday, everybody.
Well, my old days of doing those, though, we would own half the shelf, right? And you wouldn't let anybody go on shelf. So I think that to your point, all the pieces are in place to actually allow not just more choice, but more of the innovators to hit the shelf, which is what you want. And then the visibility, like I mentioned earlier, and the kind of word of mouth that's going on more than ever before. You can change on a dime on how you feel about a brand in a heartbeat. And that's one thing that was somewhat insulated, I think, from hundreds of years of building a brand for some of these companies. And there's like, it can go away in a heartbeat. Like you got to change it. It's not going to work.
We talk about that a lot on this show, how it used to be, Nestle would just tell you what to eat. Sara Lee would just tell you what you were having for dinner. And now these brands really have to stand for something. Even with plant-based, you just can't say you're plant-based and like hope that that'll be enough. You have to really mean it. And from the top, from the CEO on down to the person who answers the customer service phone, you have to live and breathe that mission and get the mission get the vision, because now with social media, Gen Z and millennials, they will snuff you out in a minute. If you're not authentic, forget it.
Yeah, authentic is the word, right? And that seems it's worn out a little bit from everybody saying it, but in reality, it's if you're truly authentic in what you're trying to do and where you're heading, which I truly believe, 100%, this is where Wicked's been from the beginning and where we're going to continue to stay. But it's that authenticity comes across loud and clear to other folks at the table that are not, and it's easy to almost to pick them out at this point in time. So, yeah,
it is easy to spot them.
Exactly.
Well, let me ask you, what do you wish you knew 10 years ago that you know now?
Oh, wow. I think for me personally, because I was in the big food companies, right? So I was so insulated 10 years ago or so in just kind of what was going on in one company, because there was so much stuff going on in that space for that company. But if I wish I was a little bit more personally external, so I would have seen some of these, not just, and they're not trends, they're major changes and major things that the communities around the world that had to rise up enough, to your point, to get to a good point where like, we're not doing this anymore. We're changing everything and we're shifting our habits. And, I do a lot of local work here with a lot of food entrepreneurs as well over the last 10, 15 years. And you can kind of see their angst, but I wish I knew and could even help more people when it comes to like, what was the network that could get some of these great ideas off the ground sooner than later? Because a lot of them struggle in a sense of cash or resources or other things. And it wasn't because they didn't have an amazing idea that could change the world. It's just that they couldn't find the resources, right? So I wish I was more of an enabler that way, to be honest with you, 10 years ago.
Well, that's why I'm so happy to connect you with M&S, because that's one of the things we like to do in this show is connect people, so that if you've got a skill set and let's bring two people together who have skill sets that can really make a difference.
Connect the dots there, right? Yeah.
Okay, so you're running around, you're having a bad day, things aren't going the way you would like. What is the phrase you tell yourself to get yourself back in the game?
I you don't know my whole story, but before I started with General Mills, actually, I was a professional ice hockey player.
I saw that on your LinkedIn profile. Yeah, or was it maybe Wikipedia? But yeah.
Yeah, maybe, cool. Right. So I played 4 years professional hockey before I jumped into General Mills. But why I bring it up? It's the honing of your skill every day, right? It's the you're only as good as the day before, right? Like you can't rest on anything that you've done. And if you played any kind of professional sport, which there's only, maybe 1% of the planet that has ever played a sport where you get paid for, you're feeling that tension all the time and that urgency. And I've learned that early on, and it's all around sharpening that stone, right? Keeping it sharp. It's all about, leaning forward. It's all about, trying to know you're going to have good and bad days, but then, the next day is going to be better. Right. And then compartmentalizing some of these stuff, so it doesn't really weigh you down. Right. So, if you think about any sports, the routines that people have, right? That just trying to get them into a new mindset to keep playing after they had a bad play or whatever it might be. I kind of take that to heart as I think about what I do every day. So it's like I'm only as good as I was yesterday. Like I got to keep moving. And that's what I love, because it allows you to thrive, but also don't feel so anxious that you're not getting done what you want to get done every day, because I wouldn't want that. But the balance of it, that it's a longer road to hoe, but at the same time, yeah, every day you got to get better, right? So.
I love that. I'll summarize and say something I tell myself when I'm having a bad day. I mean, I got lots of phrases because I love them. That helps me for different things, but a body in motion stays in motion. And some days you make huge strides. Some days you just have to force yourself to move inches, but I just want to keep moving because I'm afraid of the stopping will immobilize me. And I just, as long as I keep moving, no matter how much ground I take over, I just have to keep moving. Body motion stays in motion. Yeah. Okay. My last question for you, sir. It can be Wicked Kitchen, but it would be kind of cool if maybe you do like a Wicked Kitchen, but then also something else. You're running around, super busy, didn't have time for lunch. What is your go-to snack?
Ooh, there's a couple of them for sure. But lately, because I'm in my Wicked office here, I always eat some of the Wicked Very Berry porridge. Told me over for a snack or whatever I might be doing. Some of the go-tos, and once again, they are Wicked mostly, but I'm a Beyond Meat fan. I invested in them 8 years ago for General Mills, as I was part of that team, and I spent a lot of time with them. So I have a lot of I just love what those guys have done and the impact that Ethan and his team has made on just the visibility of it, right? That brand is one of the most visible ones on the planet, and it's why we partnered with them and actually put their products in our meals, because we felt like it was like the intel inside, like it was something that you kind of knew or was familiar, but at least with a brand like ours coming in the U.S., we felt like it was a way to show people some confidence to try our products. So I do tend to have a Beyond Burger more than not if I'm looking for something in that space. But it is a combination of great taste, but it's also the work that they've done. It's just always been exciting to me.
Yeah, me too. Just a couple of tidbits for folks. So when Beyond Meat launched on the stock exchange, I believe it was 158% in one day of a gain, and they were the most successful IPO since the crash of 2008, and their IPO happened in 2019. So they made great strides there. Again, you talk about visibility. And then another little fun tidbit is that Ethan, before this show, I used to do it in person, and Ethan launched Beyond Meat sausages, which I'm so sorry, but they're the best sausages on the planet. Even though I'm Wicked Kitchen, I got to try those sausages. But Beyond Meat sausages, okay, I got to do it. He launched those in my kitchen. So because Tyson, which the venture arm was out of Chicago at the time, and Chicago's a sausage city, they were launching the sausages in Chicago first. And I was working with WGN Radio in Chicago at the time. So even though I did the interview in LA, because I split my time between the two cities, Ethan came to my place. We cooked up some sausages together in my kitchen, did the podcast, launched the sausages before the next day they went live in Chicago and then around the world. So fun tidbit there.
I don't know if you're getting out to Expo West at all, but we're going to have an experiential food truck out there.
Yes.
And we got to have you try our we have a different experience every day, but we have our pizzas and our meats and our burgers are being grilled up, and we have some tacos with shredded mushrooms, I think it is, and others. So love to have you out there to see that if you're out at the show. Or if anybody
100%, because it's 45 minutes from my house. So I'm going to come find you. Yeah. In just like under a month it'll be. So I'll come find you in person. I'm going to that experiential truck. I know we saw each other last at Plant-Based World Expo, I guess it was in New York. So now we'll see you out around the LA area. Pete, just such a thrill to have you. Yes, thank you for all you do. Thank you for bringing your knowledge and expertise. Thank you for taking that knowledge and expertise and putting it here to make a very real, tangible difference, just like Chad and Derek do. I am so deeply grateful. Well, please don't go away. You stay here. Everybody else on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and YouTube. I will see you all for the Plant-Based Business Hour next week. Bye, everybody.